Welcome to Sports Beat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast presented by Big O Tires. It's Tuesday, January 21st, and I'm your host, Blair Kirchhoff. Let's talk some Royals baseball with beat writer Lynn Worthy and columnist Vahe Gregorian. It's looking like Alex Gordon and the club are closing in on a one-year deal. The seven-time Gold Glove winning outfielder and three-time All-Star is something of a rarity in today's game. He's played all 13 of his major league seasons with one club. He had a bit of a resurgence at the plate last season, and that likely strengthens the desire for each side to give it one more go. Lynn and Vahe also talk about the new deal for home run champion Jorge Soler and what that might mean for Soler after the 2020 season. After a break, we remember David Glass, the venerable Royals owner who died last week. Glass had sold the team to John Sherman after last season, and we remember the highs and lows of the Glass era. So with snowing outside, that must mean it's time to talk baseball, because that's what the hot stove is about. Lynn Worthy is here. It's good to see you, Lynn.
Good to see you, too.
And Vahe Gregorian has joined us.
Hi, Blair. I hope it's good to see me, too.
It is. It's always good to see you, Vahe. And it's always great to talk about the Royals. Look, we're in the middle of Chiefs excitement, and everybody is all, including the Royals, excited about the Chiefs. I saw on the scoreboard at Kauffman Stadium last night, they had a congratulations message for the Chiefs. I thought that was pretty cool. And
it is neat, that dynamic between them, isn't it? And I'd urge anybody listening to look up the story. I think it was a little bit of your brainchild, but a Sam McDowell product on the relationship between the Royals and Chiefs, and starting kind of with Ned and Andy. But it's a great story and really telling at this juncture. And
I don't think it happens in every market. I don't think that there's a relationship between the two the football, the baseball team, or two professional teams. I just think it's because they share a parking lot, and so they see each other a lot. And we know the athletes from one visit the games. They go to the games of the other, and famously the Royals being on the sideline in 2014 for the Chiefs' Monday night game against the Patriots. There was Billy Butler and Hosmer and those guys. But anyway, there's Royals news to talk about too, and there could be some big Royals news this week. Lynn, fill us in on who might sign with the Royals.
Yeah, well, we've been reporting since November that all signs indicate the Royals were going to bring back Alex Gordon. There was at the end of the season, it was up in the air. He might retire. He already had said he wasn't going to play for anybody else. He didn't want to play for anybody else besides the Royals. Talked about being a Royal for his entire career. But it looks like probably by the time we get to FanFest at the end of the week, they should probably have a deal done to bring him back at least for one more season, which would be 14th, or at least part of 14 seasons in the major leagues, all with the Royals. And so, like I said, going back to November, it seemed like that was going to be the case, and now it seems like it's just a matter of physical signature here and there, and he'll be back for one more year.
Seems like FanFest would be an opportune time to roll out the announcement of a very popular player. Bring us up to date on what was his contract situation? He was it was club option.
Yeah. So he had signed with the biggest contract they had given anybody, and the club option was after this past season, which would have paid him, I believe, $23 million. So going into this season, everybody acknowledged that wasn't going to happen. I mean, even Gordo had talked in spring training and during the season that he was basically just said the contract's up. Like, he wasn't even acknowledging that fifth-year option was a possibility, and that he'd probably come back, or if he came back, it would probably be on a one-year deal. I mean, he had said this openly before the season even ended. So when they declined the option, it wasn't a surprise to anybody. I mean, he still actually had been doing some events with a jersey on, representing the Royals with charity events in the last couple of months. When we talked to him after he got his 7th Gold Glove, sounded like he was leaning towards coming back. He talked about being interested in what the Matheny regime would look like and just getting that itch again. So, I mean, even with the contract expired, I think that was nothing that was not expected, and there was still an open communication. And General Manager Dayton Moore had even said, that he felt like the feeling was mutual, that, they would come back. It was just a matter of basically getting other things sorted out as far as contracts, arbitration, those sorts of things, and then seeing how much of the pie they had left to be able to offer Gordon.
He said, I think I read in one of your stories, he said that he couldn't see himself playing for another team.
No,
it was either going to be one more year with the Royals or or not.
Yeah,
not
he
baseball.
wasn't going anywhere else. I mean, he'd said that I think multiple times, and I remember in Minnesota, the Royals seem to be the team that Minnesota lines up all their retirement ceremonies and everything against. And so it happened to be Joe Mauer, who was a local, even more local than Gordo is here.
Right.
But I remember talking to him before the game about that, like Mauer having been a local guy, spent his whole career with that organization. And you could tell Gordo wanted that same sort of thing. Obviously not right next door, but from the region, having always been with the Royals, and that was something that he definitely wanted for his career.
Okay, so let's assume that Gordon signs maybe this week, but he signs. He's with the Royals this year. Vahe, what does his presence mean to the Royals?
Well, it's funny how different that looks to me anyway, based on how he's trended, in the last year or so. Because I think you had a feeling a year and a half or so ago, like, let's just get through this contract and move on. And now it feels different, doesn't it? I mean, you feel like he's still got some game left. Certainly he's got outfield game left, and he's got a bit of pop that he's resumed a bit. And I think if you look at it as, I don't know if we're going to look at it as a farewell tour, but I think we look at it a little differently that way too, that one of the biggest reasons he's here is for that influence and stability. I think for us too, and for fans, I do think it makes for a feeling you have about the organization that you see. We just don't see this very often anymore, right? The guy who goes coast to coast with one organization, and I think that's just a nice underpinning to what they'd have this season. And look, I think they can prosper by both his play and his leadership. It is a funny leadership, though, isn't it? Because it's absolutely one that everybody will tell you is purely by example. He's not a guy pontificating. He's not really a guy to go on, certainly with us, but I think even so with his teammates. Is that how you feel, Lynn?
Yeah. I mean, it's by example, and it's also just sort of the being that steady figure. I mean, like he's just everything. You never see him panic, or at least from what I can tell, he goes about his business every day. Whether it's the team last year obviously is struggling, but it was never anything that you could tell that was getting to him or anything like that. He was going about his business, and he was confident in the players in that clubhouse. Like he'd talk about the young guys like Dozier and Mondi and the different things they were doing, and with a positive look towards the future. But by example, I think the best anecdote I have is I was talking to Bubba Starling about that, and he was talking about just in camps and working in the minors, they used to talk about you have to do things this way, or a certain amount of effort, or a certain way you go about doing stuff. And Alex Gordon, who's in the big leagues at the time, is the example that they're using and talking about how he did things. And I mean, that pushes a guy like Bubba to say, this is like, you can't slack off. You have to do it exactly this way. It's not, this is good enough. It's like, no, it wasn't good enough for the guy who's in the big leagues, and he's got the resume to back it up, having won 7 Gold Gloves this year. So.
All the more so when you think about it as, a converted third baseman who was not making it.
Right.
Oh, yeah. Right. And he's talked about that, how he was a failed third baseman and sort of reinvented himself. And every time he gets another Gold Glove, it's sort of a reminder that, and he always mentions, Rusty and people like that who helped him get there. But it's a reminder. And the other thing, I think, just as far as him being able to contribute, that was one of those things that he's mentioned throughout the season, too, and postseason, was just that he had to make sure that he felt like he could still play. He wasn't going to come back just to come back for one last year. If he didn't feel like he could play at a high level, he was going to hang it up.
13 home runs last year. I don't have his slash line, but he had improved. He trended up last season over the previous few years.
It tailed a little bit at the end of the season, but he started off the season really hot, and but he still, it wasn't necessarily his best season, but it was better than the previous 2 years where he started I think that's what really started the ball rolling about him thinking about retirement, is just that he wasn't producing the last couple of years.
Right. This might be a funny way to put it, but I felt like last season he found what was left. Right? I mean, that there was more there than we thought. There was a little bit mysterious, and you got into it a bit, I think, about how the turn came and what just mechanically and different sorts of things he found. But I like the notion that at this point in his career where you think, well, he's just out of juice, and he wasn't. I know he's not vintage Alex Gordon, but he's productive Alex Gordon.
Yeah, he had to make adjustments, basically. I mean, like, there's adjustments as far as mechanics and things like that, which he did make those, but also going back to the year before, just in terms of his daily routine, these workouts, like he talked about just being, when you're 24, 25, you can go in there and, work out like crazy and just go out in the field and run like a madman during BP, shagging balls, and he had to sort of change some of those things because he's 36 he was 35. I think he's 36 next month, if I'm remembering correct. But yeah, in the last couple years of his career, he's got to make some changes so that he can produce every day, because I mean, baseball is a grind, and it's a grind at 24, but it's going to be even more of a grind at 34, 35. So he had to make those adjustments along with the mechanical adjustments.
I saw a whole new batting stance for him last season. It was just different, and that helped him get off to the really good start. You mentioned it earlier, Lynn, that this will be it's Mike Matheny's first year as the Royals manager. Does that play into this at all? That it's a transition time for the Royals from Ned Yost to Mike Matheny, just to have a veteran presence in the clubhouse while the Royals go through a managerial transition, or am I just reading too much into that?
I don't know if it's as much the managerial transition or just the fact that, they've sort of turned over the club from, the roster from, a couple years back and that championship team, and they got another year further away from that, but you still have young guys that they're going to be counting on to come up and contribute to this team. So having guys like Gordo and Witt, I think Dayton's talked about it a few times, just that having that experience, guys who can lead by example, guys who can sort of be, sounding boards, just that presence there is something that they need, because they're expecting young pitchers, young position players to be big parts in the next year, 2, 3. And so having a guy like Gordon there and those guys, they feel like has a big impact on those players. And I'm not, so like I say, obviously there's a lot of change from Matheny to ownership, and I'm not sure how much of that impacts the clubhouse, but all those young guys definitely does impact the clubhouse. And I think that's where Gordon's presence helps.
This might sound silly, but I also wonder if Alex's presence and Witt and guys of that ilk, if that's good for Matheny coming in here, sort of understanding as another element of Royals culture that is a shifting culture, but also I think there's still an understanding of the foundation of what for lack of a better term, the Royals way is. I maybe it's not anything anybody actually thought about, but I do wonder if it might be sort of an asset for Matheny as he makes his adjustment.
Well, they'll be down to Gordon, Salvador Perez, and Danny Duffy. Am I right about
from the World Series?
From the World Series team.
I think that's right. It might be. Theoretically, Mondesi.
Right? That's right, yeah. And Mondi. That's right.
Technically, right? Mondi. Yeah.
Got his at bat in New York. I remember. Hey, so one player we know will be in a Royals uniform next year is Jorge Soler. Signed a 1-year deal, and I'll tell you what, we spent a lot of time last year talking about as a trade deadline approached, what do you do with maybe one of your most valuable assets? And maybe it's just because I've been following the Royals for as long as I have. When you got a guy with that much pop in his bat, don't move him. And maybe I'm totally wrong. Maybe they should have. Maybe his value peaked at. It would have peaked at the end of July last year. But I'm glad he's back in the Royals uniform, if only for 1 year.
Yeah, well, it's going to be, unless they make the trade, it's going to be for 2 years. Like, he's under club control for this year and next year. They could trade him. Maybe the arbitration number, they feel like it's bigger next year, but they avoided arbitration, which they almost always do. I think it's one time under Dayton Moore. So he's getting $7.3 million for a guy who hit 48 homers and, I forget exactly how many of them, but in Kauffman Stadium, which is the worst ballpark for a right-handed hitter. I think statistically, I wrote it a couple times just during the season that right-handed hitter, that's the worst ballpark in Major League Baseball to hit home runs, and he hit 48 and led the American League. But I know there's still the possibility that they might try and lock him up for a longer term, which is what the Royals and a lot of these small market teams tend to do.
It's a value. That's a value issue, right?
Yeah. So if you can get him locked up for another 4 years, and as opposed to him hitting the open market and teams, whether it's whoever you want to name, the Yankees, the Red Sox, Dodgers, whoever who just wants to put a pile of money in front of them and say whatever they offer you, we'll offer you more just to make sure you come here. They could, sort of eliminate that possibility and also have them sort of some certainty for themselves as far as what that their salary and payroll is going to look like going forward, which is what they did with Witt, which you can sort of lock certain people in and then you can build around that and you have sort of that little bit of room, especially where right now, next year, I think you're looking at Brad Keller, Dozier, and Mondesi, and probably some others, but those three I remember who are going to be looking at arbitration. So to try and get somebody locked in and move forward with that is crucial.
Just one quick thought, Blair, that over the last 29, 30 years, we've covered a lot of things together, especially the last 7 here. I remember certain things about exchanges we've had during games. There was something in 2013. The Royals were kind of turning the corner, but we were both at a Royals game, and out of the blue, they're up 5-1 or something, and whoever the opponent was, let's say it was Houston, they hit like 4 home runs in 2 innings. And I remember you saying something like, the Royals just never have these guys. They just never have that guy. And that to me circles back to like, Soler is a singular kind of presence in actually possibly in Royals history going forward. And it's very interesting to see this chess piece for them.
Well, speaking of the fictitious Houston team that you, let's before we go to break, let's how about a thought on the big news in baseball over the last week and a half, the cheating scandal that's cost the Houston Astros its manager, its general manager, the Red Sox its manager, the Mets its manager, former Royals star Carlos Beltran. It's what a kind of a black eye for baseball over the last couple of weeks. It's a incredible story. Listen, hasn't cheating always gone on in baseball? Not cheating, sign stealing. I guess the Astros took it to a level that was unacceptable for baseball.
Yeah, and they also they used electronics to do it, which is the thing. I mean, like, it's always been going on, but if you can see it from the dugout, you can see it from second base, that's one thing. But using cameras around the stadium and relaying it from video rooms is something different. And then I think also for the commissioner of baseball, there was I don't know if you say take it personal, but I mean, he put out the memo in 2017 when there was supposedly iPhone or iWatches and all the Apple Watches and things going on, that cut it out now, can't have it, and I'm going to hold general manager and manager responsible. And for teams to keep doing it the next season, and sounds like for the next 2 seasons, multiple teams doing it, it was poking the bear.
It's funny, baseball, of all the sports, right, is a game built on these unwritten rules. And in fact, if I remember, I did some research on this once. The stolen base came out of a guy just deciding to run to second base because there was no rule against it, like in 1867.
It had been a gentleman's game before that.
Yeah. And then nobody told him to go back. So it's always been a game of, what can you get away with? Really, it seems like that. And now, when you got tangible rules laid down saying don't, but it still is a funny kind of twist in all this about how you're just trying to get away with extending something that's always been done, but now you have technology different. I think it's fascinating.
It is. And like I said, big story in baseball here in the offseason. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to remember Royals owner David Glass.
If your steering wheel has more traction than your actual tires, that's a big O no. Thankfully, for all your car's big O no's, there's always a big O yes. Now through February 2nd, buy 3, get 1 free on select sets of 4 Aspen Touring AS or Mesa AP2 brand tires with paid installation purchase. Big O Tires, the team you trust. Disposal fees extra and up to 10% shop fee based on non-discounted regular retail price not to exceed $35 where permitted. See store for pricing. Eligibility may vary. Not valid with other offers. At participating locations, no cash value.
Hey, it's Blair. Hey, we have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns we have to offer. And it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. For your convenience, your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. A lot of subscription services won't tell you that. They'll just sneak it on there. We just told you. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star. Please visit kansascity.com/sportsbeatkc offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. We're back with Lynn Worthy and Vahe Gregorian talking Royals. And let's talk David Glass for a moment here, Lynn. Passed away last week age 85, Royals owner.
84. Yeah.
Thank you for correcting me, 84. Really became associated with the Royals in 1993, but took over the ownership in 2000. And it was a rocky road for the Glass family and Royals baseball in the early years. And then it changed. In 2012, he hired Dayton Moore. I'm sorry, 2006, he hires Dayton Moore. And by 2013, they turned a winning record. Took a long time to get there, and then they went right to the top of baseball in 2015 after being the AL champs in 2014. He is fondly remembered here in town because of he came in and saved baseball in Kansas City, and then he won a world championship. I can't think of every tribute that I've read and heard to Mr. Glass, well deserved, and he will be always remembered in this town as a guy who did a ton for baseball here in Kansas City.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I look at it is just he had such this long run, and there was the rough years, like you said, in the losing, which I think he got some criticism for, but also in the big picture, he's basically saved baseball in Kansas City to make sure that this franchise stayed here. And then there's the World Series runs and how they've sort of restructured the organization when he hired Dayton Moore. So it's and the people in the organization just love him. You hear Dayton talk about him and just how great an influence he was on him and everybody in the organization. And I still remember Ned this past season before he retired spinning around in his chair and pointing at the picture in his office of Mr. Glass holding up the World Series trophy and him talking about how that was maybe his greatest moment and his favorite moment in baseball is being able to give him that trophy and win it for him. So I think overall people remember those great memories, even though along the way there was probably some, like you said, some bumps in the road.
Vahe, I just never will forget the celebratory locker rooms, clubhouses along the way in 2014 and 15. He was in every one of them, and players enjoyed dousing him with champagne, and he reveled in the celebrations.
He did, and yet without being, asserting himself into the forefront or anything. And I'll tell you something interesting. Dayton and I were on the phone a couple weeks ago, so before Mr. Glass died, and we were just talking. Actually, we were talking about parallels with the Chiefs and Royals and some different things with that. And Dayton remarked about the day after Game 7 when they lost to the Giants. And you remember that sort of conciliatory fan greeting at Kauffman Stadium the next day. It was sort of strange and half-hearted and yet kind of cool, right?
It went from parade to that.
Yeah, and it was weird. Not everybody came. As I remember, Gerard Dyson, for instance, was like staying in his hotel room for 3 days and stuff like that. But both Dayton and Mike Swanson, the Royals vice president of communications, brought this up, that Mr. Glass was not angry that day, but upset. And he said, I believe Mike Swanson phrased it this way, that he wanted the trophy with all the little flags on it. And Dayton, as he was talking about it that day, said he's not sure that they didn't sort of take their cue from Mr. Glass that day. That, I mean, probably they would have gone right back to work, et cetera, but there was a little bit of fire, not threat, but just sort of passion that I think enlivened their own thoughts about, here we go, we're going after this. And in those next few days, they set a little bit of the template of what was to come. And Dayton told me at the time that was when they started targeting Johnny Cueto for something that wouldn't happen for months. But things like that, Dayton really felt that Mr. Glass was a driving force in that emotionally.
Don't be satisfied with getting to Game 7 and losing Game 7. You're right. We've said it many times on the show, just how struck we all were when we got to spring training in 2015 and how determined that Royals team was. And I was thinking, man, you just came within an out of tying up Game 7, and wasn't that good? I thought that was good. I mean,
that's how I remember thinking later, like, what a loser I am. I'm like, they should be really happy with, and they were like all just furious, and I'm like, oh. So it's just kind of interesting how they converted that to what happened next.
What a great tribute to David Glass. So, all right, Lynn Worthy, thanks for being here. Vahe, always great to talk to you, and we will continue our baseball talk soon. That'll do it for another episode of Sports Beat KC presented by Big O Tires. Links to Royals coverage can be found in the show notes at kansascity.com and the True Blue app. Thanks to Derek Donovan and Randy Mason for producing today's episode, and we'll be back on Wednesday with another Sports Beat KC, where we talk sports in Kansas City every day.